Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast presented by Zwift here with Benji for UAE Tour Stage 4, the Palm Jumeirah stage, finishing in Dubai Harbour. They've changed it a little bit, I think, with a finish, but there is this big right-hander with 800 metres to go. Apart from that, the parcours, there's really not much to say. It's 175 Ks, and we make no excuses in saying that I turned it on with 20 Ks to go. Even then, Cav was kind of chilling at the back. But Zwift has brought out a new feature called leaderboards. What do you like about this, Benji? Seeing all your historical times on every segment right in the companion app. What are you going to use it for?
Well, there's this one climb that I do all the time on Zwift, which is the Volcano KOM, because let's be honest about it, I haven't really tapped into the 15-kilometer climbs yet, but that shorter climb I tend to use to see, have I gotten better over time? And now I can actually see in the Zwift companion app, oh, I was at this level. Like, I did 22 minutes across a 3.7-kilometer climb a year and a half to 2 years ago. And now I see that at the end of 2022, I'm doing that in 11 minutes, which is a significant improvement. Then my next goal is beating that again. And with that Zwift Companion app feature, I can now see that properly in the app of Zwift itself.
Pretty good feature. I'll be using it as well to track my segment times. And yeah, maybe comparing against Benji as well. Although I think he's been a little bit fitter than me at the moment. I'm stuck here in Australia.
I doubt that.
Maybe. I mean, we'll see. We'll see you at the Giro when we get together back in Andorra. A bit of a teaser there. This stage, though, we were denied the Sprinters World Champ Stage 1 in the Crosswind stage. No thanks to Merlier and Quickstep, although that did make it more exciting. This is where we have Kooi, Groenewegen, De Maar, Bauhaus, Bennett with Van Poppel, Ewan, Cavendish. It is, apart from Philipsen and Jakobsen and Van Aert, virtually all the big boys here, almost more top sprinters than you'll see at the Tour de France. And the break went with Bardiani, two Bardiani guys, and Baudin from Ager Desert. Am I being naive, Benji? Am I going back? Am I 2 PCM mode in thinking with Luke Plapp on, he's on 5 seconds right now? Before this stage, we had, if I can do maths, 4 stages left. No, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 4 with 2 intermediate sprints in each. That's 8. 8 times 3 is 24 seconds. There's 24 seconds up for grabs at intermediate sprints. Elia Viviani, with all due respect, ain't winning this sprint ever in current shape. They don't have a lead out for him. Plapp's 5 seconds off. Should Ineos, is it possible, or is it ludicrous to say they could have tried to control a break to actually get bonus seconds for Plapp, who took them on stage 1 against Remco?
I think it's not completely insane to think about that, because I swear just before the second intermediate in this race, the gap to the breakaway of 3, which 2 of the riders were Bandirani riders, that gap was like 2 minutes 20 or something. Like, if you have a Josh Starling or someone else that is pretty decent when it comes to the flat riding right at the front, that isn't necessarily going to have to play a role in the final, then you can close that down, or at least make sure that Plapp can sprint for some seconds today. And I do feel like that is a thing that could have occurred here. Now, they didn't do that. Now, would he have won that sprint, Plapp? I think that he's got a solid chance of taking more seconds than Remco, because if you look at the stage 1 sprints, Plapp was doing better in the sprints than Remco was, while on the climby sprint that we saw in Jebel Jais, that's very different. Remco took it there in front of Plapp, but that's after a climbing effort and is also uphill still. So I think that's very different in comparison to the sprints we saw in stage 1. So I agree that they could have tried something there. Am I surprised that they didn't? Not really, because it's kind of out of the ordinary, I think, in a current age of cycling to go that hardcore management mode, micromanagement in stage, and try and milk the most out of those intermediate sprints. But hey, we were looking at a breakaway that was destined to be caught, but I feel like the peloton was like, let's have them out there as long as possible.
Yeah.
Because they stayed ahead for a while, eh?
They got caught with like 5 Ks to go, but it was under control the whole time. They did a left-hand turn, which the peloton had to do in full as well, which was a bit sketchy where the motorbike took the wrong angle, 6 Ks to go, but it's just a straight run and then a right-hand bend at 800 meters to go, 700 meters to go. Now, you want to be on the left-hand side for that bend to try and come across and overlap. That's what happened. Just put my hand in front of the camera. That's what happened last year. Kooi was on the right side before that bend, and he just lost tons of positions, ruined his sprint. You want to be on the left. Now, that was where Lotto and Jumbo-Visma were. That did mean when the break came back through them, they were near the gutter, not on the open side. So it is more sketchy there. It is. You've got the curb there, whereas Broe on the open side on the right-hand side. I have to say, Benji, I've been the biggest Broe. I have the best lead-out train in the world, booster for however long, almost since this time last year. Today, they really didn't get it right. It didn't click with Mullen Archbold and Van Poppel, and I'm surprised it didn't.
Agreed, but I also feel like there were so many teams trying to get to the front that 99% of the teams failed to do what they wanted to do at this point in the race.
So you think the late tactic didn't work on this sort of stage?
On this stage, the late tactic kind of backfired, and let's talk about it for a second. Even Lotto tried to get late on the left side on the moment you mentioned there, near the curb. They tried to come past with Lotto with about, 1 kilometer to go. I think that they tried to move to the front.
It half worked.
It half worked because the front part of the train got past the Jumbo towards the front, but the lead out with Ewan stayed behind the Koi train. So they weren't able to get to the front with Caleb Ewan. And when you get that situation, you're kind of not in the perfect position because you want your entire train to get to the front in time. But they were squeezed out of that. On the opposite side of the road, DSM was looking good until their front rider went to the side, and then they were kind of blocked in between an Alpecin rider and riders from Bahrain, who seemed to be the most prominent team towards the front before the last 1.5k. And then there was this sketchy turn, and I'll let you talk about that turn because, yeah.
You got this big right-hander. I must say I don't know what's happened in it because the fixed camera front on is before the turn, so we don't see what's happening in the exit, and the heli shot is behind a building, so we don't really see what happens. All we know is a Bahrain rider and a Bahrain and a Lotto rider go clear. They get a gap to Tosh van der Sande. So van der Sande was on the barrier on the left. Koi's moved off his wheel somewhere else to the right-hand side as they face it. And I can't see Jaco at all. I can't see Cav and Bol. I can't see Bennett and Van Poppel. And so all the Damar, FDJ, absolutely nowhere in this sprint at all. And to be honest, Benji, there was no control. Out of this corner with 750, 650 meters to go, it's a mess. And it actually it comes down to Gaviria jumping early like he's in a reduced Giro bunch sprint.
Yeah, but I feel like if you're that Bahrain or Lotto rider, if I'm the Bahrain rider, I try and go anyway. I try and go for it, wing it, reverse lead out. He did, but the Lotto rider didn't even try, and maybe that's because his effort was done. But I feel like there was something there to maybe work with the Bahrain rider and try something, because that reverse lead out forces other teams and other sprinters to launch early, and your sprinter might have a gap open up as a consequence if you're not in the right position. But I agree, Gaviria went for that typical Gaviria style early launch to catch the Bahrain rider. He did it in Argentina, and then he actually won the stage that way. But he's also done it tons of times in the past. I swear he did it in the Giro stage where he actually ended up winning the Giro stage as well. But a few times that he actually ended up losing those races as well. And this is the perfect example where he's basically in a losing position if he does that, because he's giving a lead out to other sprinters. Welsford is in his wheel. Merlier is also in his wheel. They're kind of fighting for that same wheel of Gaviria. They're trying to move up that way. Molano's in the wheel of Merlier. Koi's in the wheel of Welsford. And that's kind of the dynamic we have going into the final 300 meters. I'll give it back to you.
That's right. It's like Gaviria opts when Bert van Leeuwenberger, he sort of couldn't do his full lead out to 200 meters to go, and it's Gaviria that really does the substitute lead out for Welsford. And it's because when Gaviria comes off the barrier to come around the Bahrain rider, that Merlier almost has to pause. He has to yield the wheel to Welsford, who gets a perfect drag into it. Koi then gets the perfect sit on Welsford, and we have another photo finish, not as close this time. Molano weaving his way through the man who's been the lead-out man for Ackermann, and this is all a lot of the sunk cost stuff, Benji, because Ackermann's on more money, one would think, at least last year, than Milano. He comes through and he wins this stage in impressive fashion. Now, I think apparently it was light headwind in the finish, maybe, so there was a benefit from being in the draft and hitting it at the right time, but he wins this photo finish ahead of Koi, who's second again in a UAE Tour stage. He beat Welsford, who's had to come out of his wheel. But yeah, messy sprint. And I'm just watching the overhead again. Merlier didn't have it.
No.
I don't think Merlier had it. I was going to say he got boxed in, but not really. Kind of guys, like, they'll fight more aggressively for a wheel when they think they have it. And I expected him to try and bully Coy off Welsford's wheel because he was on Welsford's wheel and he just yielded it. And that suggests to me he didn't have it, and he didn't. Groenewegen boxed in, Ewan way too far back. Bennett and Van Poppel they both sprinted. I don't think Bennett had it either. But yeah, Ewan had to check his sprint multiple times and he and Cav gave up. So the new guard, Benji, Coy, Milano, and Welsford putting bike links on the old guard.
I wouldn't necessarily call Milano the new guard either. I feel like we've had him win those Colombian races back in the day. I swear there was a year where he cleaned up all the Colombian races.
Not a Tour de France stage winner.
Oh, okay.
Like
that's
Cav,
true.
like
Vuelta
Groenewegen, like
stage
Demar,
winner.
like Ewan. Yeah, I wasn't
Beat his
supposed
lead out.
to.
Milano's a better sprinter now than Ackermann is.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But I will say, I will officially call you out. This is an official pure complaint by the Belgian government and myself that on stage one, I heard an Australian voice in my head say, Merlier is the fastest sprinter in the world. But then a few minutes ago, I opened up Twitter and it says, Patrick Broe says, Sam Welsford is the best pure sprinter in the world. What changed in the last 3 days?
What did I also say in stage one?
I don't remember.
I reserve the right to change my opinion based on the most recent race that I've seen. In this race, Welsford beat Merlier. So I'm sticking to character. Also, Welsford is Australian. So that makes him both significantly faster, and in the race I'm seeing, he goes even faster than what you're seeing. So obviously, Welsford, I think, the strongest sprinter today. He opened up earlier than Coy was in his wheel. And Milano, that's not to say Milano doesn't deserve to win. Milano hit it at the right time.
The strongest sprinter that was in a competitive position, because we can't know what a Groenewegen would have done in that position.
Exactly.
What a Ewan or Cavendish would have done in that position, because Cavendish was back in Narnia, like you would say it. And I'd argue that Ewan was basically in a good position for a bit, but then basically arrived in the Shadow Realm a few minutes later. So this was not happening for both of them. Cavendish, I feel like they tried to move him on the left side, but didn't happen. And Bennett and Van Poppel tried to move on every side of the road, but they got blocked every single way. So I also feel like Bennett didn't have it anyway. So it just wasn't happening for those riders.
Cav's got to give up on the bowl project, I'm afraid. I know it's 2 sprints in, but he started sprinting behind. I think Cav's in fine shape. I think he's in perfectly fine shape based on stage 1.
Yeah.
But he just, I mean, I don't know. They're thinking long term. They're thinking Tour de France. So why give up on it at UAE? I agree, but Bol was a lead out man, or supposed to be, for Dainese for many sprints last year. Like, this isn't like when Van Poppel came across to Bora and his now job is to be a lead out man and he really hasn't done it too much before, them giving up after 2 stages. It's like, well, Bol is 27 and has been doing this for DSM, and I don't know, maybe I'm not thinking as long term as them. Who knows? Maybe they should. UAE is just such a good competition. It's not the place to practice. It's more like a Lessamini you go to practice, against guys where even if you make a few mistakes, you can at least, he can still open his sprint. Ewan and Groenewegen's missing a last man. He doesn't really have a top last man, no offense to Mezgets, but he's not a Van Poppel or a Merkel or a Laporte. And Ewan, as you said, Benji, it's all from 1,200 meters to go. That's where he lost it, right?
I agree. And the question is why didn't any of these teams try to sign Dan McLean the last couple of years? Something like that. A rider like that, he can really pilot your sprint to the front. Will it help in a situation like this? I think yes, because McLean is the kind of rider that can find the gaps and kind of go through those. But can a sprinter follow a Dan McLean in those tiny gaps? That's the question, because not every sprinter is willing to kind of dive into the tiny gaps, no?
Exactly. Like Bennett, even though Bennett is... Bennett's not as fast as a lot of these guys, but he holds Van Poppel's wheel really, really well. And, of course, the tweet about Welsford, perhaps a little bit tongue-in-cheek, a little bit provocative, maybe. Welsford's faster than Bennett. If you put Welsford in Van Poppel's wheel, he's torching dudes. The lead-out matters a lot, But also maybe Welsford wouldn't be able to hold Van Poppel's wheel. I think he would because he's a big dude. And
Then
I've seen him
again,
hold wheels before.
if the Belgian rocket man Jasper Philipsen was here, nobody would be talking about anyone else right now.
Headwind sprint, he probably does win. Like,
Yeah.
he probably does, yeah. He comes out of
And
Coy's
positioning,
wheel.
he goes into the tiniest gaps.
Yeah. He probably would have killed someone for Welsford's wheel and wins.
Killed someone in
Yeah.
slight exaggeration, but I agree that he probably would have jumped into holes that don't exist for that to occur. So
How do you feel
yeah,
about
definitely.
Coy?
How do I feel about Koya? I think he doesn't have the top lead out here. Like no disrespect to Van der Sande and no disrespect to the team that's around
Van der
him
Sande
here.
did a good job.
He did a
The
good job
Lotto
here.
The Jumbo train did a good job for who they have here to be in that position for that bend.
I agree, but he doesn't have that last man that can really do
No,
a Van
no,
Poppel
no.
thing. But a lot of teams don't have that. So he's in a situation similar to the other sprinters here. He gets probably the most that he can out of the sprint position that he was put in when the sprint starts. He jumps to the wheel of Welsford. He tries to come around Welsford towards the end late, so he doesn't necessarily hit the wind too early, while Welsford hit it a bit too early, stuff like that. I don't know. I feel like it was a pretty good sprint from Koy, and he's destined to win
Oh, no,
Grand
Koy
Tour
played it
sprints,
perfectly.
World Tour sprints.
Do you-
So.
Do you think he has a top end? Like a
He
true
wasn't
burner.
the fastest this year when it comes to like his actual like when getting past riders, he doesn't seem like the fastest sprinter this year necessarily.
No.
Does that make sense? In the same way
That's
that
what I
Jakobsen
mean.
hasn't this year.
Yeah, that's what I sort of mean. It's like when like Merlier snaps off a guy's wheel when he actually
Yeah.
has the legs, it's like, holy fuck. He's like going straight past him. Groenewegen too, actually, sometimes when he gets it right, you see just like this huge, like what
Yeah.
dump, and he's gone past him. I
When-
haven't seen that with Coy as much. He's more like, he won against a lot of the good guys in a German race last year. I can't remember what it was called. One day race, I think. Not a World Tour race, not the
Munsterland?
H1 one. Yeah. I don't know what's that. Yeah. Like I have to speak German to refer to the race. That again was more like he was in good position. He timed it well. He had a steady, consistent sprint, not like a 3-second destruction. But yeah, interesting sprint. Anything? Have you changed your opinion on anyone here?
Not really, because we really haven't had that like pure
Oh,
sprint
Milano?
of. Not really.
This
like,
is impressive, man.
it is impressive, but I will never consider Milano a top sprinter.
Really?
Really?
One of Vuelta stage, one of UAE stage. I think he's...
Yeah, the weirdest Vuelta stage of the last decade.
He has zero lead out. He is the lead out.
Yeah, for himself.
He's like, who are you? I am. Pete Weber. Juan Sebastian Milano. I don't know. Yeah, I know what his contract situation is. Quickstep or, to be honest, Alpecin, but I can't really see a climbing on Alpecin. No, come on, that's... Mate, imagine they had Lopez and Milano. They'd be like one of the best teams in the world. They'd be like a top 5 team in the world. I don't know. I think he's really good considering how sprinters have gone at UAE in the last 3-4 years. Christophe Gaviria and his lack of lead out, I think really impressive actually from him. And also Benji, he's lifted a huge weight off Adam Ricardo Yates' back and the staff's back at the DS of this race. It's not been going well.
Yeah.
They're nowhere on GC.
But
yesterday wasn't good, and he
What
at
is
least
one
wins a
sprint stage? What is one
is
sprint
something.
stage compared to winning the GC with Pogacar? Like,
It's better than none.
if Pogacar's here, he's still competing for GC, 100%.
Pogacar, yeah, of course. What do you mean?
Like,
I
not
mean, do you
just
think
because
he
he
makes the
can.
split in the crosswinds.
Yeah, I think he would personally make the split. The rest of his team wouldn't be there, but he would be there.
Maybe. Do you think, this is an interesting hypothetical, if it was Pogacar in Merlier's group, not Adam Ricardo Yates, Quickstep pace him back to Remco?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't think so.
0%
I think that's
chance.
different. Yeah, I think that's a difference.
Because the optics is different, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't do it.
Because Because that's the one time that you found a weakness in him, and maybe in the next split,
Yeah.
you might not find that weakness. With Ricardo Yates, you might still find that.
Exactly. They backed themselves out. We'll put this guy off the back again. No
Yeah.
problem. He'll have no Bjerg will be spent. With
Yeah.
Pog, yeah, okay. Interesting hypothetical. Tomorrow we have stage 5 from Al Marjan Island to Al Quwain. Now the sprints have often finished in Al Marjan Island. I am a connoisseur of the UAE Tour, and I've went back and looked at every stage finish since its inception in 2019, I think it was, and I don't believe they finished in Al Quwain before. So it's a new finish to me. It looks like, I think I checked, it's like 3Ks, 4Ks in a straight line, so it should be pretty safe. And today's sprint, apart from the bend, was pretty safe, I would say, as sprints go. Who have you got for tomorrow?
Who do I have for tomorrow's stage? Considering it's pretty straight, I would say. But it's also, once again, really a stage that doesn't shout necessarily crosswinds, or am I? It goes through a village and then to a city, but I don't know if there's crosswind, guys.
It's in the desert, man. It's in the desert.
How am I supposed to know the difference between this sand and the next sand? Like, I'm trying to figure out if there's wind here, but I don't fucking know.
It's inland. There could be wind.
Anyway, let's just figure it out. Regardless of that, I feel like Welsford was good today. I feel like I'm going to keep supporting my boy, because yesterday he, I called him and he ended up competing for the victory. So I feel like if I do that again, he might compete for the victory again and actually deliver. So Welsford's going to do it tomorrow again. Well, again, for the first time.
I'll be interested to see how Van Poppel and Bora go with Bennett tomorrow. They don't have that right-hand bend. I think it's one where they can try the late move-up strategy, because if it's on a big highway, straight line, you just sit in the draft at the back, and then you just move up when you want to, and there's going to be space for you. So I'd expect it to work a bit better tomorrow for them. FDJ and Demar look nowhere. Cav, I really want to see if he's still with Bowl. Maybe it will be better for Bowl in this sort of sprint tomorrow with space, where Bowl looks in reasonable shape. In Saudi, he was in good shape. It's just the positioning, but maybe can move Cav up. I don't know. I think this is one where Jumbo will struggle a little bit more if there's these huge dudes on the front burning them off, but it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully we see more sprinters get their chance to open up their sprint, like Groenewegen, Cav and co tomorrow, and then maybe Ineos will take our advice, Benji, and we have a huge fight for the intermediate sprints. I very much doubt it, because it probably is completely unrealistic. And then we have another sprint on stage 6, and then we have Jebel Hafid on Sunday, I believe. So there could be crosswinds tomorrow, according to Benji. You'll have to quote him on that one, not me. He's checked the weather forecast. But other than that, that's all from us. Thanks to Zwift as always, and we'll see you with the recap tomorrow. Ciao.